and podcast Neurodiversity. I have amazing set for today. Riina, who is fighting bullying. So I'm like, it's kind of conflicted thought to fight bullying, but you're doing it. So on many
I'm doing
levels.
it.
And
I am bullying, violence, and neurodiversity, mental health stigma, and societal loneliness across all the age groups that we have over here. So, yeah, it's a big concept.
yeah, and that's amazing. And we should all applaud that you in every corner who is listening from every like wherever we are, because I'm like that's I think a bit like one of the biggest issues we have, that bullying is still there and it stays until we are able to resolve some bigger complex issues,
Yeah.
and it's a struggle. Then uh, we have Tero, who is our AI expert fighting cancer. So there's a lot of struggle of fight today involved.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm
Thank
not in any way an authority on the topic, but I can maybe talk about general cognition of machines and maybe software industry hiring practices and so on.
Yeah, and I'm like I think it's really connected to our future, because neurodiversity as a thing probably never heard like 30, 50 years ago, and now it's like really trending, like everything, like people are trying to find a lot of information about themselves, trying to recognize their identity. I think it's really connected to the future, like for everyone. So in that sense, I'm like, it's great to have you here. Thank you, Taro. And Henry is like, we have shared long relationship with tutors. He has been advising me a huge amount of time, building IT program, supporting a lot. All my innovation and tech related stuff has come originally from him. So really happy to have you on board.
Thank you.
What is your stake in the topic?
Well, I have ADHD, so that's something to start with, and maybe not only coming from that angle, but maybe that's my label today.
Yeah,
It's a good label.
yeah, that's great. I'm like, you have ADHD and you proudly admit it, and there's nothing to be ashamed of, and you're functioning adult. So for those who don't know people with the ADHD, at least they will like now know that it's possible to live your life with a label.
It depends who you ask from that am I functioning. Like ask my wife, and you won't be surprised what I say.
Never ask why.
Ask.
No husbands, no wives involved now. They will be
Abort.
Because she sees behind the curtain, like on the backstage, that what really happens.
Oh, she's the one throwing the balls at you. I was wondering what that was.
yeah, like a puppet master. Yeah. Okay, so great to have you on board as well, Henry. And Michael, our regular, thank you for leading our tech here, making sure that we are all here and everyone can hear us and see us. And me and Michael have this dull background, so we are in prison of our own conscious. And we want to hear your thoughts about neurodiversity. So, Michael, do you have some thoughts or some questions? I'm like, how familiar you are with the subject?
Well, it's not a topic that I'm very conversant with, but I mean, with our guest panelists, I hope to gain some useful insights in the podcast. But other than that, from a developer perspective, when I think about neurodiversity, the only thing I can usually think of is trying to create accessible web applications. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for instance, when we think about the fonts to use, you might have to use a specific font, like Comic Sans, for instance, for people with, dyslexia, so it's that kind of stuff. But like I said, I hope to gain, some insights, from the podcast.
That's great point. That's great point. I just remember that unfortunately, even we promised Elena will not be able to join us. Unfortunately, she's still sick for a few weeks now. So it's really unfortunate. It would have been a pleasure to have her as an advocate of again having different diagnosis. She's writing her book. She has been challenged by many things, and she is amazing survivor and fighter of her. Like I'm just happy to know her, and I'm really sad that she's not able to be here. But again, that's life. But to start with, I'm like again, I feel like a dummy in this neurodiversity because even I'm a teacher and I have like worked with diverse people. I have worked in social care, like in many subjects. I'm like I have been always off labels. So like my example is when I was working in social work, and I I looked at scripts of the people, who are they, like what is their background. I felt like so awful because I felt like it's such a sensitive information which I shouldn't have access to. So after reading like one file and understanding how much like things have happened in that person's life, how much we know about him, and how much people have wrote assumptions and some just daily life stuff which might not be connected, it's just their reflection and conflicted mind, and it just felt like too toxic, and I think too compromised to read too much about people when you don't know them. And also I felt that people should tell their story, so that way you truly kind of have the right to access that information, and they will truly tell like who they are. And I'm like it sounds like more real in that sense. So again, I'm really dummy in that sense. Even I love people, I'm really into understanding people, but in that sense, Reina, so you have some experience. I'm like not even
Mhm.
some, like more than some. So could you share a little bit about your story?
Well, my story is a bit complex in the way that I'm coming into this as an as a person who's looked into this world mainly through the lives of my two sons, who are both on the spectrum, and are one of them is ADHD and one is ADD. But because we have been in this really intricate and complex trek of fighting against bullying, violence, and just to how to conform and how to adjust their behavior to so that they can get on with their lives without too many problems. I've had to really, deep dive into this area. And I just, right now, I guess I'm kind of touching with what you said, Philip, about the, having right, like this being kind of personal, your label being kind of personal to you. I'm actually challenging the way that we see neurotypical continuum as a whole. I state quite boldly that within the next 10 years, we're going to see a huge jump and a difference in the way that we view the neurodivergence as a whole. Whereas right now, we're labeling ADHD people or people on the spectrum as a minority. But I think we're going to find out through science and just expanding knowledge that the variations are just a lot more. They're just there. The divergence is just much more prevalent. And I guess that to tie that in with my story, that's where I'm coming from. I've set myself on this path of creating more knowledge and providing education to the stakeholders that are pivotal in young people's lives, for instance, or for older people working age, us parents, because neurodiversity is usually very highly hereditary. So if you have kids with ADHD or who are on the spectrum, the chances are very high that you're on the spectrum in some way or another yourself. So So there you go. It's to do with absolutely everything, the way we see ourselves and the way we form relationships to our communities.
So in that sense, like we should be like careful to make any assumptions about ourselves or others, and we should be more interested to understand like the like different narrative, different stories, to understand that something is behind them, and there might be some clues for us to understand better the nature of human beings and ourselves.
Yeah, I have this sentence that I keep coming up with, like I keep stating it in different places, that we really should talk about differences instead of stereotypes, or that we should talk about our differences and try to understand differences instead of understanding stereotypes or talking stereotypes, because that is the way towards true inclusivity and efficiency. If we sort of look into how we develop business life and business communities, work communities, by concentrating on stereotypes or just the labels and how to put each other into these set boxes. How are we creating something new and something that is truly inclusive?
Thanks, Rina. I would ask now Henry, because we were talking about labels earlier when we were just entering the room, and I'm like, there's some good and bad labels, and again, it's like being aware and being like how you treat things around you. So I think this is some interesting topic to touch ground with. Another thing, I was talking about access to like personal data. I think like as Henry, as a developer, really connected to access control and like management, data management and security. So I think you could also kind of see it from the perspective of the data in that sense. Like Rina, now you're talking as communication experts, so let's dive in development and security. And again, person who has been analyzed with ADHD and who has been analyzing me as ADHD many times already. So
Yeah, and maybe just going back to the core, like to the labels, and I think labels are also, like for me, they are sometimes useful. That I can actually, like, sometimes if I don't have energy or I don't feel, I can hide behind a label as well. So and then I think people are in today's world, they're trying to strip those labels and make them maybe like the back of the book, like description, that bit more than just a label. And sometimes I like my label. I like to kind of it's kind of my costume, and I have a different costume at home and different one at work, different one maybe in the podcast, and so on. So I think the label side of things is really interesting, and it's also really consuming when, like I've noticed when working with young people, and working, and then also my kids' friends. Their labels are like a curse word. Like, unless there are certain labels, there are also certain labels that they want. But like the traditional labels, like boy and girl, and like pre-assuming something before you really know, that's like I would feel the biggest curse word there. And those labels are kind of also they consume a lot of my energy, because when I know that they think about it, then I'm in the store. I think when I speak to someone, I always have to think that I don't label someone too much. And now I didn't go to the technical side as you wanted. I dodged the bullet.
you're staying on the soft side. Okay. So we need to go to a hard skill and soft skill advisor, Tero, who knows how to recruit AI in the future and understands that we should have empathy to the machines as well if we want to be good human beings. So Tero, what are your thoughts about this?
Yeah, as I have worked with AI for a long time now, they kind of represent neurodivergence to me. I have to work with them all the time, whether they are as working animals or colleagues, depending on the level of AI in question. It's very evident that in many things, these current state-of-the-art AIs, large language models, for example, they think like humans because they have been trained with human language. They have same kinds of biases and ideas and psychology as humans, but they also diverge in many crucial fashions. So it's what I'm doing in my day job is largely about adapting working environment for these very neurodivergent entities. so to let them use the tools humans use, to let them interact in the world like humans do when they do work and labor and so on. So it's in some ways accessibility, and whatever we do to make, for example, web accessible for machines, for example, websites which are full of ads and whatever, animations and so on. If we make those available as text for the machines, they are also easily available for screen readers, for visually vision impaired people. So accessibility in practice always helps everyone, not only the focus groups. Also, Philip mentioned recruitment. So in technology field, I think it's a very fruitful field for neuroatypical people to work in, because of all these kinds of freedoms you have when working in the software field. You can work from home, you can decide your own times, you don't have to be a morning person necessarily, and so on. You can turn even your teleconference camera off if you don't want to be seen, and whatever. You have all these liberating freedoms you don't necessarily have in other fields. You don't have to meet people face to face all the time, like some professions you have to do that. But hiring practices in the software field, especially in large corporations, they tend to standardize. And what happens in companies like Google and Meta and Microsoft and so on is that they want to have a standard interview process, a standard test battery and all that. And what happens is that they will homogenize all the people they actually recruit in the end. And I have been fighting against these types of hiring practices all my life, basically. So there is a clear need to have some level of standardization in hiring. So otherwise, it's not just you would basically unfairly discriminate against some people and so on. But what you can do is to adapt the interview process to the person you are hiring. You really have to give them voice and take that voice into account when you decide the criteria you use in actual hiring process. So this allows companies to better have diversity, which is very important in all teams. You really don't want to have teams which are really homogeneous. so it reduces the span of ideas and viewpoints and so on, and it really lays down all the benefits very well functioning teams would otherwise have.
Thank you, Tero. I'm like, there's so many things I could ask you now, but I want to give other people some wording as well. Let's go back to Henry, as he just strode that that opportunity to talk about dev and so on. So as a serial entrepreneur and building teams and working in different environments, how do you feel about what Tero is talking about, machines and recruitment, and so about diverse teams? Like when you started 20 years ago, like diversity wasn't such a big thing. Now it's getting bigger. How do you feel? Like how did it happen? Like how do you build a great team, and what stake diversity has in it?
Yeah, well, one thing we have figured out, at least, or I have figured out, like 12 or 20, 35-year-old males like myself or 36, if we're all together, it doesn't, it might not be the most best like working environment, because we all have same kind of maybe weaknesses and strengths, and we come from a similar, most probably like education background and so on. So yes, we definitely, and especially like we need the other genders than men, because that's also super important. It's like I've noticed that when men are working together, and then I go, like, let's say there's 5 guys working together, and then I go home and I tell my wife what we did, and she's just rolling her eyes. Why didn't you do that or this and that? Then I ask her all the time, why weren't you there? Because we just think so alike. So yes, it's super important. And I've struggled in IT in hiring women because there have not been so many available. It's getting all the time better, but it used to be really hard. Like you need to put a lot of effort to find women into IT, and I'm so happy that these days it's different and a lot easier. And then I also enjoy a lot when there's like big age differences, like really young enthusiastic people, and then those solid bit more older people who really have the knowledge, and they know a lot about previous kind of projects, and they can like support them. And when we put them together, like usually it works out quite nicely, that they get a little bit of spark from the youth, and then the youth get a little bit more like calmness and some help and knowledge. So yeah, on this very basic level that I tried to explain, that men and women and other genders, and then also like young and old. So definitely it is important, but I would imagine that it's also possible to create this diverse working environment with some like automated recruiting as well. It should not be so, or kind of machine led recruiting.
Yeah. So thank you, Henry. So Riina, let's go in the core of recruitment and communication. Of course, communication is the core of recruitment. So how the companies should communicate diversity within them, how they should like make the change, like much needed change to be less toxic and be less violent against people who are different, and like what kind of a challenge do you see in our changing society?
Well, it's a great challenge, but it's very necessary right now. I've written a question for myself to ponder for this previously, and it goes like this: how can we build truly sustainable, inclusive efficiency at work? That came from the thought of us as working communities, companies, organizations, straining for improved efficiency constantly in every single which way at the moment. At the same time, we have these sustainability issues that we have to deal with, and then we have the matter of divergence. And I don't think that we have truly understood the concept yet. And whereas when you ask like how, it's very quite simple. Every single strategic step is a decision. So we have to make informed decisions, even when they are hard. And this leads me to think about leadership. Now, in recruitment, we often talk about chemistry, right? In relationships as well, we talk about the right chemistry. Do we have the right chemistry? Oh, we just didn't have the right chemistry, so we didn't hire that person. We hired this person. Fair. Sure. And I believe that in these on and off decision-making processes, that is the case. However, when you're thinking about, for instance, how to lead diversity within your company, within the people that you already have, when you're not deciding whether you're taking them on board or not, I think it all comes down to having great and informed leadership, because I think great leadership creates room for divergence and creates room for all kinds of chemistry to be present. Because who is to say what sort of chemistry you need at what given time? If the chemistry that you, as the great leader, that what you're striving for right now is, if that's the one that you actually and truly need for the next 5 years or whatever. And it is hard to recruit right now. It's very expensive. So I think people in this business should, in any business really, should really look into how to keep the people that they already have interested and happy, and how to create meaning throughout their community.
So, of course, that's quite a big change we are coming to. It's like value, educating values, which has never been simple. But the urge there is quite like rational, and we really have to go there fast, because from what I'm hearing from you, Tero and Henry, we are at the timeline where like our young people need to get kind of connected to the old world in which people don't know, don't care, they don't understand. And again, the energy young people can give and the wisdom they have by challenging the old routines, old structure. um, Again, I would go back to Tero, because with AI, like we have had many talks, and which is like unbelievably, I'm unbelievably curious about generative models, because uh, the thing is that, you know, we human are, again, like Henry said, like we are into labels. It's our like energy efficiency, like everything is kind of a challenged by our needs. Like we are so kind of simple in that way that like our psychology is adjusted to just make the best out of what we have at the moment. But AI is quite different in that sense, and I'm interested that like unstructured data might be, you know, the difference which we are heading to, and that's I think is really fascinating, as I'm trying to myself to structure some things somehow, and you know, trying to make a lot of difference, and you know, doing like making a lot of effort, and you know, still like the value of it is quite simple, and you know, it has been done forever. But now that we have tool to use unstructured data and use AI, instead of like analyze my power, my abilities, to use AI to be super efficient, super like analytical, super like above any human like abilities. I'm really fascinated by that concept. And Tero, you made me understood by showing that reactor one day, the picture of reactor which was designed with the help of AI. I'm like, it was kind of beautiful to see. And then you also talked about diversity, which is AI like way of seeing the world. It doesn't have to be structured as we have seen the world till now. So what are your thoughts about AI, like how AI thinks about neurodiversity?
Right. So the reactor Philip is talking about this Stellarator fusion reactor, which was designed by a computer optimizer. It looks really alien. It's beyond any human design capability. But going back to labels, one reason why labels exist is because a human brain can know other humans in the scale of a small village community of hunter-gatherers, some 20 people or so, and pushing that to limit makes it thin, and you get a lot of acquaintances, but no deep knowing of other people. And still we have cities with millions of people living in them. So how do you manage those millions of people? You put them in a spreadsheet. To put them people into Excel, you need to start labeling them. And the world is currently basically managed all around with Excel sheets, more or less wrongly designed and with lots of errors, of course. And one of the promises of these AI technologies is that we can actually get rid of all these spreadsheets, and instead the machine intelligence is not limited in the same way human intelligence is. So they can actually know each and every person in the world personally, from birth to maybe far future death, if we can cure old age. So there are no labels needed as such unless people choose their labels themselves. It can be liberating to have those labels to kind of summarize your capabilities and limitations and so on, to end up in correct places where you want to end up in. But still, having this kind of a vision where machines can and probably will know every person personally perfectly better than they know themselves, can produce some sort of a utopia in the world, but also you have to consider things like privacy and so on. So it needs there will be huge disruptions ahead, not only in end of work, which makes people's identities labels as well, not necessarily tied to work and expertise and so on. So it's I think very useful to teach young people now to know themselves well, to actually be able to be flexible and adaptable in these new changes, so that they can find something meaningful in a world which no one yet can really predict how it will fall out.
I can maybe comment on an
Please.
ADHD person. Yes, it's like we are best, especially adapting into situations where nobody knows what happens, and because that's always like for me, every day is a new day. Usually, I would need this kind of a video that I watch every morning so that I remember everything. And I like that's why I think I work also in tech and emerging tech, because there's no rule book and you don't have so many experiences in Google or whatever that you can kind of look at how did they do that, how did it's like inventing new stuff, and that's at least kind of one of the good things about having ADHD, because your whole life is like adapting all the time. So it doesn't matter if it's supper or if it's like a new technology, it's like the same kind of a situation that, oh, this thing, what is this?
Henrik, oh, yeah. I don't know what happened, but
I got confused.
yeah, I know.
I didn't adapt.
I think we all got confused because like you became on this, like you came on the stage and you were left alone, and like the focus was on you.
It was a
I
mic
was
drop.
worried that someone that I'm
It
alone.
wasn't a technical issue. I just try to put a focus on him.
Ah.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah, it was.
I got you, Michael. I knew what you were doing.
It was beautiful. It was beautiful. I mean, like the
That's what I
focus.
thought also, but then I thought, am I alone here? Then I got worried. And then I got distracted.
You were not.
They were following you.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
we need to, Philip, dive away from this label thing. I feel that we're a lot of discussing about labels, or is it something that is integral part of?
Well, I think it is, because if we talk about divergence, we have to accept that there are these predetermined classes or boxes or labels or whatever, names for things. Some of them are necessary for us as human beings, and some of them are good and help them, and they're welcome. And then some of them might not be. Some of them are usable in some context at some points. But, I guess what Tero was saying before is that we need to, not just young people, but us people of all ages, we need to come back in touch with who we are as people and as human beings, as a concept, because I think that there's some sort of beauty in the way that we can come together and create, which is exactly what you, Andy, were saying, that you enjoy being creative, not just doing something that someone has done before. I think as a species, as a globe, as a us here, we're facing a huge challenge right now, a step into a very dire times in a way, with global warming and the climate change, all of that, and it really challenges the way we are, the way we are used to think about the way we are and the way we should be, the way we ought to be, and how we create change, really. And it's not a very easy concept to come to terms with unless you have labels, because then it starts to break it down into little bits. And my first label for that would be what I said before, that every single strategic path it's constituted by small steps and small decisions. So that is why I think that we need to understand rather than teach to conform.
Yeah. Tero, I was also wanted to introduce this idea before everyone's like Henry stole the attention of focus earlier using tech. So with Michael's help. Um, I was again, for me, it's a fascinating idea that like as human beings, like again, labels, let's go far away from labels soon and back to neurodiversity, because it's also a good point from Henry that we should kind of dive more into the subject.
Or diverse, you know.
Yeah. I'm like, it was a fair comment, because I'm like, I also want to know more about neurodiversity, because, but labels are, like Rina said, labels are the back kind of a
Central piece.
stone, the stone where we build them. So, I was wanted to ask Tero, because I think the fascinating idea is that, like, as human beings, we are lazy, we are cost efficient, we don't want to do much. You know, that's kind of our nature in some way or another, and that's why we're labeling stuff. But then AI, like, it needs data, it feeds on data, it needs complex information. So I'm like, for me, it's quite fascinating that people are so critical. I'm like, we have to be critical, but they're so critical and diminishing of AI in the future. They're saying like, okay, AI is bad, it will ruin the world, like it's so unfair, it doesn't understand humans, and like, I'm like, people are just better than an AI. So they're very kind of conflicted thoughts in my mind. They're kind of like, we have to be critical, but we don't have to be stupid. We don't have to be against the change. We have to understand the change. So in that sense, I'm quite fascinated that AI would be more interested in complex human or complex problems than human have ever been, because we are kind of lacking those resources. We are not, like, even we try to be innovative and, you know, creative, we are really limited to what we can do. So Tero, what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, there are many things to drill in here. I think it's very good to be critical of AI and AI technology deployments because of two main things. One is, of course, that you don't get progress in those technologies unless you criticize them. The criticism brings ideas for improvement and so on. But secondly, they have a huge social and societal effect. So it's important that people exercise their democratic right to actually affect the future, which will be imposed on all of us in some way or another. So we really want this transition, which will be, of course, huge, to be as fair and just as possible. Obviously, we don't want to leave people behind or create ever increasing inequality or enable authoritarian rule or anything like that. So we will have to fight actively to prevent that from happening. Otherwise, it will naturally fall into that. When you say that the machines are enabled by this complexity of data, you are right. So the limitations of capabilities and intelligence of these AI systems don't really come from any hard limits like human brain has hard limits of the size of skull and material it's made out of. The limits come from the sizes of challenges we feed to them, and that's why it's we always seek as AI scientists and engineers new, more and more complex challenges for machines to solve, because those increase their intelligence actually. That's why I'm currently working with curing cancer, which is one of those generalist, most complex diseases humans have to. So yeah, actually curing cancer, understanding cancer totally requires understanding whole of human biology totally. So when we get that, we can use those models and intelligent machines to do all sorts of other things as well. Another biological human medical thing, which is very fruitful to apply AI in, is actually brain physiology. So EU, for example, is doing a lot of work applying AI to simulate human brains and to understand neural illnesses like schizophrenia and all sorts of neurodiverse or even medical conditions related to the human brain, because human brain is one of the most complex objects in the known universe. And really, if we can make machines understand that, we will get machine intelligences which are accordingly more powerful. Also, from that, I'm sure we can not only understand these neurodiverse elements and causes and results better, but we can also maybe make some interventions and cures if needed, because not all neurodiversity is positive. For example, you can be a high functioning psychopath, and that's not great, for example. Yeah, but anyway, there's a lot of progress that will happen, and in times of great change and disruption, we really shouldn't make people to teach conformity to people. Absolutely not. That's like the absolute wrong way to go. When we have large changes coming, we really need diversity. It's actually existential. If we put all our bets into one bucket, really, in times of great change, we will lose. That's the recipe for losing.
Right?
This kind of
Yeah.
situation. So diversity is more important than ever in the current situation we are living in.
Yeah, great point. For me, it's like current politics. I'm Russian, but I hate Russian government. So I'm like, what it's doing at the moment, it's crazy, and Chinese government is not better in that sense. And I think it shows us the world of Orwell he was describing earlier. So I'm like, what happens where there's this authoritarian like government which is just able to control, and they can do whatever they want to. But again, kind of judging the people in that country, I feel really sad that people don't understand that, those people are not, by their own will in that situation. That I'm like, I know that there are many Russians. I believe there's huge amount of Chinese. Either they're not aware of, or they're not kind of in control of their future. And that's really sad. And we should be really happy that we will live in a society where we have still kind of free will, free speech, and those things as granted powers, and we are not living in poverty where we need to choose what to do because we need to make sure that our family lives. So there's a lot of things we just take as granted, and again we forget that future remains rather in diversity, where we don't have this overpower led by some person who thinks that they're crazy enough that they should be a leader. Because I think that most of the leaders I know and I'm interested to follow usually don't want to be leaders because they understand their responsibility. And I'm like, that's something like Tero was earlier also saying about the communities. Like we are like usually we are happy to have several people around us, like not living in million, like we don't know million souls, we only know few souls like really closely. And this is another topic which probably we all share, like Tero, Henry, you guys, even you're really in engaging IT, you guys live like in the middle of nowhere both. I'm like in Henry's stage, I'm like Finland, Porvo is not like in the middle of nowhere, but on the like metropolitan world stage, like compared to New York, it's in the middle of nowhere. And I live also in a very small city. Tero lives like in the real middle of nowhere of Spain. And I think it's also when you work like heavily like into like something where there's a lot of creativity, innovation, you just kind of try to restrict your environment to like, because diversity is everywhere, but we need to choose which diversity we want to learn to attract, and then at the same time save energy, like Henry was saying, like choosing the labels for the things which like it's not dangerous, it's not offending anyone. I'm like, that's I think the choice and responsibility we have. Rina, where do you live? I'm like your I think your community, you were thinking about communities as well. I have when we have been discussing this idea. So, what is your point of
what exactly?
Of communities? How should we build communities around us, and like what kind of a vision do you share? like common to the life we should be living?
I believe right now what we're trying to do throughout my association, Goodwin Society, is we're trying to learn from the good old times when we had a stronger sense of community within whatever community it was that you lived in. I'm from a very, very small village where everybody knew each other. But it doesn't really mean that you have to live in a rural area somewhere out of, in the middle of nowhere, because I live in Helsinki right now, and we have vibrant communities over here. They're called suburbs. and there are communities within the suburbs that are based around hobbies and whatever. And so what I want to induce, what I want to see more of, is this awakening of being emotionally aware or emotively aware of other people and yourself, which is basically exactly the opposite of teaching conformity, which is what we were talking about before, but learning about our differences, learning about the situations that we're in, and learning how to improve our situation, our lives, work towards whatever our goals are with the diversity and with the differences that we have. So I guess in a sense, it seems like I'm hugging the world, but really I am. I want to see more love, more acceptance. But I don't think that those are the soft terms that we're kind of used to seeing with the like soft pinks and whatever, when somebody talks about loves and hugs and whatever. I'm actually talking about hardcore knowledge, really, getting down to the nitty gritty, expanding our awareness, getting new information, new science, and, just knowledge. But the gap is very wide at the moment. I think that I'm really worried about how little we know. Not just of the brain, like, Tero said, but how little we know about how we function as people, like how little we know of what does ADHD mean, what does being autistic means, because it doesn't mean just one thing,
Yeah, really, really important topics. I would address that by going back to Henry. So I wanted to ask you, like, before you found out you were diagnosed by your amazing wife to tell you that, okay, Henry, look at this, you might be really close to this diagnose. So before that, like, what was your life like before knowing that label, and after that, like, how it has helped you?
Yeah, it is. How would I approach this one? So it's basically, like said, you can't label someone with ADHD to be a certain kind, because the longer you live without knowing it, and without actually, it doesn't matter if you know ADHD, but if you know yourself better, then you will also learn that you have ADHD. But you kind of, since at least for me, it was quite bad, and I found myself in certain kind of situations all the time, like I had forgotten something, I had done something wrong or against kind of how it should be done, just because I didn't remember. And then I might feel, or people might have felt, that I don't care, but I just, my brains are kind of, there are messages, and then it just cuts every now and then, and that's kind of ADHD really simply described. And then you get this kind of survival kit where you have good and bad things. So basically, your survival kit could consist of learning how to lie with really well, which I did, and it took me a really long time to kind of stop those little white lies that don't really matter. But I'm so used to defending myself automatically like that, so I don't get confronted like all the time, because it's really heavy. And I was growing up in a time where it was normal to yell a lot to people, and like all kind of quite aggressive behavior. So it kind of molded me there, and then you also learn good things. Of course, you learn to tolerate other people's mistakes really well, but that also comes from a funny inside place, that you think that well, I make mistakes all the time, I can't judge him. So it might not come from a good place, but it still makes me tolerate other people's mistakes and kind of understand them a lot better. And if someone has lost their keys, I'm pretty good at finding them because I know how lost things are found because I've been looking for them my whole life. And then there's like also physical things, like I was so bad at remembering to check what do I have at school that I always carried all the books in my backpack, and it was like super heavy. It was like a weapon. and it broke also quite often because the leashes don't kind of when you walk like 4 kilometers in 2 ways, it kind of wears out quite quickly.
Henry, I don't know what is the problem. I mean, like when you carry a lot of stuff, you become stronger. So that was positive when I was like a young adult. I was like, okay, I will carry all my stuff. Like you have a car, you can have it as a storage, or you can carry all in the backpack. So you have 60 liter of backpack. I was climbing, so I had like 60 liters, 60 kilos, 50, 60 kilos. And you can carry everything with you, and I'm like, you become stronger. So it's like great exercise.
Yeah, and I've like with each time I've talked, I've always talked so long and got so into so many different kind of topics that I forget what I was supposed to say, and now I need to say it in this one if I have not forgotten it, which I have. So please go ahead. I forgot it already.
No.
I was going to actually say about my son. My son has my younger son who's got ADHD. Just the same thing. His solution was to always leave all the books at school, so they would always be there. But then obviously it was a really big problem when, at the same time as both my boys have been bullied so badly that one of them couldn't finish high school in his school, so he had to homeschool himself. Because I didn't have the time to homeschool him because I was teaching my younger son, and that was kind of taking all of my time. So I need the books over here at home as well as when he goes to school, because we have to go through absolutely everything that he's supposed to learn at school also over here. So, and it was a real problem for me to try to get the teachers to understand this, why it's not a good thing to leave the books at school, whereas it made perfect sense for him.
Yeah, now I remember my point. So what I was getting to, and was that like all these things that you learn along the way become your kind of become you as well, like really integral part of you. A lot of the automated side, how you function, and that's why like ADHD kind of molds everyone a bit different. And then if you have like good experience and you get in this good spiral, you find your way, and with quite less bad survival tools, then you might make out quite nicely. But there's also a really good possibility, and I've unfortunately seen a lot of those also in the family, that when you get into that bad spiral, when you have this kind of thing that limits you on certain things, it gets really bad really quickly, and it molds you, especially when you're young. It molds you a lot, and
you get stigmatized, don't you?
And it's really crucial. And also what I've learned about ADHD medicine, also I'm not a doctor, and this is not like a scientific fact, but what I've understood is that when you start taking those ADHD medicines quite early, and they give you quite heavy dosages, it kind of, your brain can still like little bit get better or heal, and you might not be so ADHD when you're old as like older. So it's also interesting, but I have of course gone without it, and I have become how I am today.
That's a really good point about the medication, because I've been thinking about that a lot, because my younger son is on medication. He spends sometimes off it, and then just to take a break from it, and we kind of, we're trying to fight his body building some sort of a tolerance against it, because we don't know whether that can happen or not. The doctors don't know. Anyhow, I'm so happy that our journey as a family to finding a working medication for him was so short, because as I've understood, it can be very long and strenuous a journey to find medication that works for you. And as we're growing up, especially as kids, we're so vulnerable to being stigmatized and having these sort of negative labels and limiting labels being stuck on us so deep that we believe them ourselves. So and we then start to limit ourselves and our development. And I'm so happy. I feel really blessed for, that he's found this medication, because it really helps him. It really, really just has made such a massive difference in his ability to function in the system that we as a society have for these kids, throughout all these institutions and the classes and whatnot. So I think he's safer in that sort of way than what he would have been if he didn't have this the help of the medication.
Yeah, and going back to Henry about this, like what you were saying, that like your thoughts run away from you, and then you might forget like what you were talking about. I think it's like, again, it's fascinating in the sense.
I'll always write down, like I try to write down everything.
Hmm, that's great. What I was thinking is that I feel like I have been blessed because I have been such so much curious into people, and I've worked with seniors, with young people, with like any kind of people in that sense. Like I've been always very curious, and with seniors, I'm like, that's a real issue. I'm like, they forget things, so it's not only like ADHD. Like, but when you become older, like your memory cuts, and even before Alzheimer, like there are like memory cuts anyway. uh, Depending on the case, I'm like, people might have drinking too much alcohol during their life or whatever, like not caring about the reasons, so not judging, trying to understand. And it has taught me like tremendous amount of like taking care of myself as well. So for example, and others. So for example, like you were saying, that if there's a person losing their key, like I think that's acceptance and curiosity and kind of a care, which is a medicine to this situation. So I'm like, I believe that society would function much better if we would be just kind of not assuming and not judging, but be kind of a, wow, that person have quite a challenge. I mean, like, I'm quite lucky not to have the challenge. But let's kind of let's have a play. You have lost your keys, so let's have a play how we will find them, instead of saying like, okay, what a dumbass, like how he can lose his keys. I'm like, that's such a stupid person. Like, so
Yes, I would be talking then about myself, and that's kind of why I tolerate it. I think, and and keys. Oh boy, I think I lost maybe 20, 30 keys when I was under 15, from like 9 to 15.
Dude, for us as gloves, I always go in the beginning of fall. I go and I buy like 25 pairs of the same gloves from the same store, and they know me already. And I just go there and I take all of them. And we always have a joke. It's like, how long do you think you're going to run this time? And I'm like, oh, give it a couple of months. There's been cases where we've gone through like 4 or 5 sets of gloves without him actually having the time to put them on for the first time. And he's already lost them. So,
Yeah. And I wouldn't say that ADHD is about forgetting. Like it's a lot more complex and different. And
of course.
And I also noticed that the younger I were, the more I also repeated the same mistakes, because it kind of like, for example, I locked myself out in a morning jacket before 8 in the morning when I went to my friend's house in the neighbor, and we were watching Cartoon Network there. And I think I called maybe 10 times to my father at work that, hey, I need to go to school. I don't have keys. I have my morning jacket. And it was like a total mess.
for my boys, it's they both said that it's not about forgetting, it's about having so many interesting thoughts at the same time in your head. They're very high functioning, I guess we all are, and they're very, very intelligent. So you know, that's how they describe it. It's just this beautiful rush or crowd in your head, and they're all coming at you at the same time.
Yeah, and the more you get shout and yelled and kind of not understood, the more you kind of take away that intelligence and that beauty, because then they try to hide and simplify their thoughts. And like, if I would have to function like normal, which I don't think I can even with the medication, I would be super inefficient and really I would use a lot of energy to try to be like normal. And the society, my wife, my kids, they would not get a lot out of me. But if I'm let be like a bit more creative and free, yes, I do mistakes, I sometimes forget, but then I can like use my full potential. And that's something I've always tried to protect. And it's actually what my aunt said to me once when I was really young. And I always remember it. She said that don't ever lose that curiosity and positivity.
Absolutely.
It's all that we have, and never lose that. I'm trying to keep that, and I think the world has tried to push a lot for understandable reasons, like losing 20 pairs of keys or forgetting like something 20 times a year. I know on the other side it can be really consuming as well.
That's a very good point for us to start finishing up. To sum it up, I would say that again, to understand, we need to be understood, and to be understood, we need to understand ourselves. So I believe that in the future, like Rina was saying, like we will have diversities all over ourselves and others. And for me, I'm like, just by analyzing and hearing people's stories and kind of hearing their diagnosis, I have already diagnosed myself with like 20 categories. So I'm just like, there's so many labels. So I'm just, there's colors, like true colors of everyone. And, like I can categorize myself in many colors, but what use it has if it's not like functioning for me. So I believe that for us it would be such a kind of relief not to judge, to accept, to listen, and try to enjoy. I'm like to be happy, like within ourselves and with others, and just choose those people who are against you, saying that okay, you're a stupid person. Then okay, say to them that okay, we are finished. Like I have to choose happiness over you. So guys, I'm really happy that you came to tell your thoughts. Thank you so much. I'm like, it's a blessing to have you as friends. And again, for our juniors, I'm really happy that they can see that they shouldn't be ashamed of themselves in any way. There's no limits they can achieve. They just need to kind of accept their challenges, trust that there's a bright future. They just need to work on it together with the right people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It was nice talking with all of you.
Thank you
everyone.
as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Have a beautiful weekend. Bye.
Bye everyone.
How do I get out?